Oh, but okay, I try to teach Charlie some Russian endgames, maybe a little bit. Howdy.
Hey man,
How's your evening going?
pretty good. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. I've been busy, but thanks for being so flexible.
Of course. Anything for Daniel?
Oh, I'm already, the tears are coming, and we're 30 seconds into our conversation. I might choke up, actually.
No, it's alright.
So,
Yeah, just don't be a little bitch on your own stream. Turn the
never,
webcam off
little
first.
bitch on my own stream, never. Chess streams were never like that. So I was thinking, obviously, like a lot of things that we could do. I am aware of sort of the something that you mentioned last time, which is the order of things. How do you decide which moves to play first? So we're going to tackle that a little bit. I was thinking we could start traditionally with maybe one or two warm up games, then go to
Okay.
sort of the tutorial phase. We'll do a couple of different exercises, and then maybe finish with another couple of games. How does that sound to His Honor, His Majesty Charlie?
Sounds wonderful to me. Just tell me when to hop in. I played a little recently.
Sorry, go
Wasn't
ahead.
great.
Wasn't great. I think you're 930.
Uh,
Man, I only saw two moves. What the hell is this guy doing?
yeah, I'm not sure. That was a weird play. I see no reason not to take that, right?
I don't see any reason not to take that either. He's just developed his queen and nothing else. He thinks he's
Okay.
intimidating
Now
you
do
by...
Yeah, it seems like a pretty worthless move. Do I want to block with the knight or the bishop though to develop bishop? Which one's better here?
Well, think for the future. Where do you want the knight to be? What's the most active square for the knight?
Well, first F3 and then
Yeah.
getting him over onto E5.
Exactly. So take care of your future self, something I know you don't do in real life. So develop the bishop so that the knight can go onto an active post. Also, if you were to develop the knight, that bishop would then be hard to develop.
True. True. Yeah, he'd be blocked.
Okay. He thinks that the person who gives the first check wins this game.
Yeah, so I'm just going to play this and you can tell me if it was a good or bad move.
Excellent move, occupying the center, stopping his knight from coming to c5, by the way, which... Okay, now let's see if your 400 plus exercises you've solved in a certain theme have helped you.
You're talking about the forks, huh?
I am talking about
With this
force.
pawn?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. I like that speed. Now you say this pawn, but I know which pawn you're... Yep, very good. That might have been the fastest you've ever seen a 4K. He thinks that... I don't know if he's thinking. So what do you take with?
I think I take with the knight first, right? So I'm not trading queens, right?
Sure, take with a knight. We'll talk about this moment after the game. This is actually an instructive moment. Yeah, and that's why I would have taken with the queen. You still have ways to extricate this knight, though. You have to defend the knight. How can you do that?
It's by pushing the pawn up, right?
Exactly. But one thing that we will talk about actually today is some basic endgame technique. You're at the stage where you don't need to shy away from endgames anymore. You should be excited, Charlie. I don't hear any sounds of excitement from you. Okay, so we've got bigger fish to fry right now. It seems that your knight is lost, but you actually have a really, really cool move here. And I want you to pay attention to his king. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say the move I was looking at was I see the queen can get pinned to that king pretty easily, but I don't have a way of getting the bishop there. So what I was looking at is bringing the knight to g5 to threaten queen, so that way he's going to have to retreat the queen, which buys me a little extra here with my knight.
I'll give that move an A-. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll play it, and then you can tell me the better.
The A move, yeah. So it was really like 7 head, the top move. But the fact that you're seeing ideas like knight g5 is still good. Okay, your idea worked like a charm, because what do you have now? You can win the game basically on the spot. And whenever he's castled long, we talked about this months ago, castling long by definition makes the king weaker and more susceptible to things like pins, stuff like that.
Yeah. You're talking about the bishop, right? But that doesn't win the game. It just wins me the queen,
Wins
right?
the queen. Sorry,
I'm
used to GM talk. Excuse me. I'm sorry, it loses the game. You only want a queen. 12 moves in.
It barely even gives me an advantage, is what you're saying.
Slight advantage. Maybe you should offer a draw.
Yeah, honestly, at this point, this guy's intimidated the fuck out of me.
Really.
Okay, so now my knight's no longer pinned to my queen, so I can just get my knight out.
Yeah, exactly. And I've found that people who capitalize their names generally want you to be more intimidated, so they're not confident in their play. Now, don't overthink the knight move. Wherever you want to retreat it, you can retreat it. But do you have a better idea?
I had a cool idea that I thought would be checkmate, but his knight on a6 stops it. It'd be bishop f4 check. That forces him to a8, and then I'd deliver the checkmate with my knight.
Yeah, but I still like the move bishop f4 because even though you don't checkmate him, that still develops a bishop with tempo.
Yeah.
And when you said cool move, my ears perked up because you do have actually a better move than retreating the knight. So first I would clear the garden, so to speak. There's some tension. You want to release it.
Yeah, so I want to go bishop into bishop here. Yep. He moves rook, and then eventually getting my knight out.
Yeah, so you're tunnel visioning the knight on d5, but you actually have something you can attack that supersedes the fact that your knight is attacked. Like, imagine that your knight was not attacked.
Are you talking about the fork on f7?
Yes, exactly. Okay. You know that a rook's more valuable than a knight, so... Okay, well, he just hands you that on a golden platter.
Yeah, is there something I'm missing? Or is that really just a shit move?
That is just a shit move, as far as I know. And so is that, well, not that he could have saved his rook, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, he thought better of it, and wow, Jesus. Well, off to a blistering start.
That was nice. That felt very easy. So what was the 7-head move? That was the only thing that I think I didn't see.
So you understand now why I perhaps would have captured with the queen, just so as not to allow the pin.
Right.
But the 7-head move was... So after he played c6, your move 11, you played knight g5. What I'm seeing is his king on c8. Is his king on c8, hypothetically... Okay, let's say you didn't have a pawn on c4. How could you have pinned his king? Like, imagine that pawn on c4 was on e4. Could you have pinned the c6 pawn to the king and made it immobile?
Yeah, I'd just bring my queen up to c2, right?
Right, but here's the thing. I think it's sometimes referred to as a second order pin. What if you play queen c2 anyway? Is that absurd, or does that actually have some sense?
It makes you seem like an insane person to me. I don't see what it would do.
Well, that would just add to your already existing assumption of me. But queen c2, he takes your knight with his pawn. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can make the moves on your board. We don't need to do a separate analysis board for that. You can just make the moves. But then look at that position very, very closely. What move do you have?
Yeah, just take here and it's a discover check.
Bingo, it's a discover check. So you're setting up a discover check, 1, and 2, you're moving your queen away in one fell swoop from the pin. So if he doesn't oblige, and he almost certainly would have, then you can just extricate your knight from d5.
That's fucking huge. Yep, that was definitely a 5-head move I wouldn't have seen right there. Sacking the knight to win the queen. That's nice.
Yeah, it is a very nice idea. And it's not that common, too. Like, setting up a discover check like that in indirect defense of the knight, not too common. So, I certainly don't hold it against you. You've failed me many times, but, this is not one of them.
On the A-. I'll take the A- move with the G5.
Yeah, for a Russian grader, that's a pretty high mark. You should be pretty happy with yourself. All right, well that was too easy. So
I'm hopping back in.
Yeah, a more difficult opponent seems to. Oh, John is a bum again. Somebody who already wants you to think he's cool just from his account name. A French defense.
So here, I don't know if we went over this, but I think it's just developing knight and then taking when he takes pawn, right?
Yep, exactly. You're playing the two knights variation, which is a very reputable defense, response to the French defense. And usually, with full due respect to people of your rating, when they learn an opening that's not e4, e5, they only just learn one variation. So if you go off the beaten path even a little bit, they're going to lose their shit. As he is, right? I'm sure he's losing his shit right now.
Yeah, I want him to flip his fucking table over.
Oh, that's happened a long time ago. He's picking up the pieces of his mouse. Okay, knight e7. Very passive development, so all opening principles apply. Do what you would do normally.
Okay. So now I need to develop bishop, most active square, but that just delivers kind of a meaningless check. Is that still worth it, or do I just want to bring it?
You want to occupy the center. You haven't finished occupying the center.
Okay, so I want to bring my pawn up then, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So procrastination is good in chess in some forms. You want to procrastinate the development of your pieces until things are a little bit better defined, so you can actually identify clear roles for your piece. Bingo. Now a clear role has been identified for both of your bishops, actually. So which one do you want to develop?
So I'm thinking to develop my F bishop, so I just pin knight to king, and then the bishop obviously on g5 for knight to queen, right?
Excellent idea.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Had you played this move, you would have, as you said, delivered a meaningless check, and he could have blocked that check with a pawn. Now you pin his knight.
Yeah, and now I just take with knight. Now I have both knights on the attacking side.
Just a very nice position. Look at how cramped he is. He has a hard time developing his bishop on f8. So, okay, he attacks your bishop.
Okay, and in this position, I don't remember if we've gone over it. Is it best to hold the pin by dropping it back and making him push that up, or do I just take the knight here and ruin the structure?
You don't ruin the structure because he takes back with his knight, so...
Ah, right, he's developed this knight.
That is literally the only purpose of developing the knight to e7.
Gotcha.
And of course you've missed it. So, keep the pin.
Okay.
Had to sneak that one in, sorry.
Well, obviously, yeah. It wouldn't be a Daniel lesson unless there was a little bit of shitting on me.
Exactly. Exactly. Man, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's probably thinking about ways to develop his bishop on f8, and the way he should do that is by moving his knight away from e7. But, you know, he's just panicking and introducing more weaknesses. So where should the knight go?
I was looking at g5.
So this is, again, more advanced than we've talked about thus far, but if you go knight g5, he'll chase your knight away with h6. And that knight will end up on the rim on h3. So you don't, and I mentioned this before, you don't always have to make an advancing move. Sometimes a retreating move is actually the best in the long run. So just make a vanilla garden variety move. Keep the knight in the center. Thank you, Trekidin, for the sub.
Okay, so I just want to bring him back to... Well, do I want to just put him back on his original post at c3?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That is exactly what we talked about. Exactly what we talked about. Daniel said he would play the Scotch defense, and he did. Sorry, I was working on some impression of some idiot.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think I know who that guy is. I think I've heard him before.
Let's not discuss him and bring down the quality of the conversation. We're having a good conversation. I don't want that person mentioned. Yeah, so bishop d7. Okay, so he's somehow developing his pieces. Thank you, Shane, for the gift sub. So again, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you just want to keep developing.
Yeah, so now I just want a castle. Is what it's looking like to me.
Yeah. But you see how much more harmonious you're developing your pieces now. Like, it just, your moves are flowing. And it's not as hard for you to come up with these ideas anymore. So let's start identifying the weaknesses in his position. Does he have any pawns that you might want to pile up on a little bit later? And remember what a weak pawn is. A weak pawn is a pawn that cannot be defended by any other pawns. Only pieces.
Yeah, I'm looking at e6.
Exactly. So can you devise a few methods of putting pressure on that pawn or perhaps attacking it? What types of moves? Name at least 3 moves.
Okay, I see rook on e1 to directly attack it, bringing... Always move that. But, well, right now the move I'm looking at is bishop to g5.
You want to attack the queen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's decent. You don't have to do that. You can keep the bishop on c1 and apply pressure on his e-pawn. So both moves are valid, whichever one you prefer.
I'm just going to go with the bishop because that's typically how I play it. But I know he's probably just going to block with bishop.
Yeah, and then you'll trade bishops, and he'll be left with a bad bishop on d7, so there's nothing wrong with what you did. Also, the queen is in the crosshairs of what piece if you develop it properly? You just mentioned this move.
Yeah, e1 on my rook.
Bingo. And that queen is now in the rook's sort of x-ray, which is never a good thing for your opponent. Okay, castle's this way. And now you can actually exploit the position of his queen. By using this x-ray. You remember that the e6 pawn is now immobilized. It cannot capture, it cannot move. So there's a certain way you can apply pressure on it that you would not have been able to. Bingo.
Right here, I see.
Nice,
okay.
Nice. And you chase his knight away, introducing more sort of discoordination among his ranks. Yeah. These are serious players you're facing, but they're getting blown to smithereens.
Nice thing is the moves seem more natural now. I don't have to think too hard about the actual moves.
Yeah, I'm not used to, like, I'm sometimes you find the move before I describe. Okay, so b5. Wow, interesting move.
That doesn't really change anything, right? I still just want to take that knight. He can't take my bishop because then I just take his bishop with this pawn too, right?
He's actually got a creative idea. If you take his knight, he takes the pawn with his bishop, attacking your queen with his rook. Then if you move your queen, he's going to take your bishop. So I would just be very calm here and pretend that you're almost not attacking his knight.
I see.
So he's actually, I don't know if he's actually thought of this or stumbled into it, but, you know, forget that you're attacking his knight for a second. Deal with the immediate threat.
Yeah, I just need to drop bishop out.
Exactly. But this has another benefit. You actually reinforce the pressure on that e6 pawn. Which is, again, goes to show that not all retreating moves are bad. Like, you can't reason like, oh, the piece is moving backwards, so I'm making a concession. That's not at all how chess works. You see?
Yeah, that was an I wouldn't have even noticed that X-ray since there's literally two pieces in front of the queen. But yeah, that would be a cascade. I'd take, he'd take, and then it's just wide open on my queen.
It's a similar concept to what you could have done the last game with queen c2. These, like, opening up of files that look closed. But... he's not bad. He's coming up with some creative ideas, but his position is so... Okay, the Naroditsky jinx strikes again.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Now I just take with knight, he takes with knight, I take knight with rook, right? Like, there's not much to this.
No, he blundered a knight.
Yeah.
John is not a bum. But that's what happens. Players are put under this pressure, and then they crack. Like a GM would take 30 moves before he cracked. This guy cracks immediately, and that's the beauty of playing active moves.
It really is like clockwork, bro. The second you were complimenting his creative
exactly.
ideas...
No, it's crazy. It's the same with GMs, too. That's the... Okay, so he really is trying to push this pin on your queen.
Okay, so I don't want to take that for obvious reasons. I just want to leave it there. It has two defenders now with the rook there. Well, three. Knight's also attacking on that d5 right there.
Right, but isn't the pin on your queen a bit of a headache?
Yeah, so just developing the queen away then?
Yeah, and how could you do it such that it's conducive to your ultimate goal of putting pressure on that e-pawn?
Yeah, I just want to drop it over here to e2.
Exactly. And now he might blunder his bishop. He might take... He's probably knowing from what I know about him, he might take on d5 with his bishop. But we'll see. My ability to predict the future is only limited to the moves of XQC. But I guess we'll see. Maybe he'll play b4 counterattacking your knight. He seems to like these counterattacking moves. Now we're all holding our breaths.
This is cute. This is nice. These have been very instructive games so far.
Yeah, and you've gone to the next level. We're not having the same discussions we used to have about the basics. Like, the basics are... You see how it works? You've subconsciously internalized all of the basics. So I don't need to keep reminding you of certain things, which is great, because it makes my job easier as well. Not that my job was ever easy with a student like you. But...
No, I understand, yeah. I'm actually curious. When you do those camps, what, like, fighter ratings are they? Are we talking, like, superhumans or, like, you know, some turbo nerds or something?
So
what kind of rating?
Different ranges. I'm flying home tomorrow, actually. I'm doing a camp in about a week, which is turbo nerds. Like, they are masters and above. So all of the instructors are, like, top 150 in the world, because nobody below that could teach these types of players. So it's very exclusive. But I also teach... I've taught for the past 5 years a camp in person in Atlanta, which features 10 groups. And the groups range from total beginners to super advanced players, masters. That's why I love these camps, is you get to interact with such a wide range of kids. And I enjoy different types of teaching. I love teaching super advanced players. It's incredibly fun. You know, it almost doesn't feel like work. But I also really enjoy teaching beginners and honing my methods.
That's nice, man. That sounds real nice.
And also just disciplining the kids and being strict. So I love that.
Well, obviously, yeah, bullying some kids, I imagine, has its perks.
Oh, yeah.
So in this position here, is there any reason I don't just take this bishop? I'm no longer being pinned. I'm not in a threat of, like, a back rank because my queen's also protecting d1.
He's just blundered it. He forgot to... The very typical mistake, by the way. it's not tunnel vision. It's a different classical type of mistake where he was pinning your queen and he didn't ask himself what the point was of your move. Like he was just like, oh, that pin's going to exist for the rest of eternity, but then he did move his bishop away. So you're up 2 pieces. You can start collecting the harvest. But yeah, the camps are, I mean, online it's a little bit different. You don't get that interaction because we do, it's just, chess camp is just like any camp. We do sports, we do recreation activities. It's not just sit around a chessboard all day.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that. I thought it was just purely chess.
Well, the one in Atlanta that I reference is actually a live-in camp. So we stay on the campus of Emory University. And it's literally like any other camp. It's just that the main activity, you have math camps or singing camps. This is just chess camp. So if anybody among your chat has any, kids and they were thinking of something for June 2021, I have just the place for them.
Someone named Cosmic Equinox just had a little baby girl if you want to go yell at the baby or something.
Oh, that's one of my favorite activities. Okay, so this is a great example of, mature Charlie being okay with a queen trade.
Well,
or if you want to avoid it, maybe you can avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, I see a different move. I was just going to get a check over here on e6.
Even fucking better.
Yeah.
I actually missed that move. Intermediate move. You actually, after he moves his king away, you have a truly 5-head sacrifice move. In the spirit of those games we looked at where Bobby Fischer sacrificed his rook, let's see if you can find it. You basically go straight for the checkmate.
Okay. I like these kind of big brain schemes.
And it's an understandable move. Look at his king position.
I think I see it. So hold on. Before you give me any more hints, is
Yes.
it taking pawn on b5 with knight, he takes with pawn, I take with rook?
You're basically right, but instead of taking with a knight, can you sweeten the deal for him? Because he might not take the knight. Can you do the same thing with check?
Oh, I take with the rook to deliver that?
Bingo. Because the key here is not to use the rook with it to attack. The key is to use the queen. So you take with the rook, that's check.
Oh, okay.
If you took with the knight, that would not be a bad move, but he could have intermediately taken your queen, and then you would not have been able to execute that combination.
Okay.
But you found the idea. And
right idea, just wrong pieces.
If he puts on his 5-head hat and moves his king away, okay, now you have the sexiest move of all time. You actually have the sexy move. Now, I'll give you one hint. What would happen if the rook was not there? Like if the rook was absent or it was a ghost?
Yeah, I mean, I could just sweep in there and take that pawn.
Okay, so that's all I'm going to say. Now
yeah,
you
so
can
this
act on that.
When he moved that king, what I looked at is sending the rook up to b7.
You're making the same mistake you made on the last move. That move is not a check, so he can intermediately take your queen, but you have the exact right idea. You have to do the same thing, but you have to do it with check. So what square am I thinking about?
It's b8 then.
Give yourself some goddamn credit, though. This is something you would not have even come close to looking at.
Yeah.
And
damn. Oh, fuck yeah. I would have... I'm upset. I could have had that. I was looking at b8 initially, but I thought...
No, but you got the... b7 is fine. You're winning. You're completely winning there as well. You're up 2 pieces, but here you don't give him a chance to take your queen. So... Yeah. Damn. So the thing that you might have not noticed is he can take the rook with a king. But you do. Yeah. What do you do now?
So now I still just want to take that pawn regardless.
Exactly,
right?
And it's the lobster pincer, mate. He cannot stop you from delivering checkmate on what square?
Right there on b7.
Bingo. That is a beautiful fucking comment. And it starts from bishop takes c6 check. So you just put on the board your first ever 4-move combination.
Yeah, and I can't get back ranked because my knight is defending at d1.
And a great observation on top of it. Exactly right. I had to look at that when I was looking at this. So that would be something like a 1600 rated player. Just to give you a context of ratings, somebody who's like 17, 1800 would probably see this combination in about a minute. And they might miss a back rank checkmate at the end of it. So that's what's called calculation. That's why calculation is so hard. You can go through the hard work of seeing all this and then miss something, some stupid little detail, some counterplay that invalidates all of this.
Yeah, and this is just game.
Yes,
beautiful.
Exactly. Very, very nice. I'm going to repeat that for the sake of my audience. Let me invite you to an analysis board. We got to celebrate this. We got to pop the champagne. This is your first ever. And I'm sure you can tell the significance of this, but this is your first ever like actual combination in a game that you found on your own. Okay, so
all thanks to the great teacher.
Oh, well, I don't know who that idiot is. That bum. Okay, so let me... And there's actually a couple of observations I want to make. I know you're eager to, to keep the momentum going. So, so he played the French defense. And the idea of the French defense, by the way, is like, who would be these French people who would play such a move? I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. But it's actually a decent opening. And the idea is to basically put this pawn on d5 and have it supported by the e6 pawn, right?
Makes sense.
So we're going to do a little bit of positional training here. Could you identify, in terms of piece placement or potential piece development, a drawback of putting your pawns in this manner? What development does it hinder?
Well, I don't see what development you hinder. Your bishop. Well, you hinder I see it. The C8, C8 bishop. This
is called the French bishop, actually. Oftentimes, openings are identified by the piece that they make very hard to develop. This bishop is now obstructed by the pawn. So that's the drawback of this opening. Yeah. Most openings like this, they have a good point and they have a drawback, and this is this opening's drawback. Now, this knight should be developed to f6. He clearly just doesn't know what he's doing here. And there's one thing I wanted to mention, which is that if I were actually playing with white, I would potentially actually just develop the bishop to e2. Okay?
Instead of going for the pin that I did.
And I want to explain to you why, because this is like the next level of chess understanding. Or maybe even do what you did against Erob and develop the bishop to d3. I'm going to show you a concept here, which is exactly what you could have used against Erob, and you did, just with slightly the wrong order, which is that Black can expose an attack on this d4 pawn, right, with his knight and his queen.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either take with your bishop, in which case you'll be defending this pawn, or you could take with the knight, a move that looks like a blunder. But if you reach back into your memory and you remember your game with Erob, you had the exact same idea here, because actually you can win the game. What can white do in this position?
Okay, so it's going to be delivering a check to win a piece, right? Because that's the open diagonal here.
Right, but you got to be careful about the order.
Yeah, so...
Because against Erob, you fucked up the order. You got lucky, but you messed up the order.
Yeah. So it's going with the knight first, right? It's taking knight on d4 and then delivering the check at b5 and winning the queen on d4, right?
Exactly. So if you deliver the check first, he can take your bishop with his knight.
Right.
And simultaneously escape the tension against the knight. So you take, check, you check the king. The queen can come back and block the check, but then you just take the queen with your bishop. So this wins the game. So partially I would have developed the bishop for that reason. But on d3, it also basically just... It's harmoniously placed, and later on I'm looking at a potential Greek gift sacrifice. So for example, there might be a scenario many moves down the line, back when, maybe a time when restaurants and bars are open again, when he castles. And maybe there's a time when he moves his knight away from g6, and then that bishop could basically aim at the pawn on h7. So you see how I'm making a move that might only show its impact 10 moves down the line, but that's true development. Now the problem with a move like bishop b5 is that the bishop stares at this knight on c6, right, which looks like a good thing. But the issue is his knight is already reinforced by one knight and by one pawn. Yeah. So this pin is really not that effective. And what he could have done here, if he knew what he was doing, is just chase your bishop away, and then chased it away again. Then the bishop would have had to go to b3, and now it's staring at a pawn that's really, really well defended by his pieces. It's staring at this pawn, but this pawn is defended by 3 of his pieces. So this bishop isn't really fulfilling as harmonious of a role in the position as it perhaps could be. So does that kind of make sense intuitively?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And again, I don't really like going for those pins. It just made the most sense to me. But I think I'm going to start looking more for what you just demonstrated, looking a couple moves down the line as opposed to just right in the moment.
Right, exactly. And bishop e2, you might look at this, that's a lame developing move. That's just vanilla ice cream kind of move. But that's okay. You're still preparing castles. You don't always need to conquer the world and, put on your Alexander the Great hat with every move. You can make a couple of small dick moves to make a couple of big dick moves at the end of the game. Yeah. It's not all about I'm developing most actively and I'm never retreating. Those players don't get very far in chess. So now we need to celebrate the combination. Everything else you did was perfect. And then this freaking move. So I was going to suggest that you just take the queen and live with your 2 extra pieces. Rook takes b5 check. So what happens if a takes b5? Can you demonstrate for the sake of the crowd?
Yeah, so that's just coming in here.
Yep, he moves his king, forced. Thanks, Klaus.
And then this, Yeah.
Exactly. Checkmate. So he's got to move his king. If he moves it to a7, here you have to modify your strategy a little bit. So what do you do?
Yeah, this is when I'm just coming over here, right? This is delivering the check on
Bingo.
b7.
Bingo. Exactly right. He has to push. He's pushed back to a8, and
And then I can just...
Yeah, this is less elegant than what happened in the game because you're sacrificing the rook to 2 of his pieces. He can take the rook with 2 of his pieces, which, to me, sacrifices are made more beautiful by the number of pieces that can capture them.
Yeah, I like that.
I'll show you one of the most famous sacrifices of all time, and you'll see how beauty can be defined in chess. Sorry, I interrupted. What were you going to say?
I just said I like that. You didn't interrupt. That was the whole statement. I just said, yeah, I like that.
Well, it's so profound that I need time to digest. I like it. I mean, I've never heard anybody say that before. Man,
come on, that's a lie.
It's consists of 3. I'm trying to determine the role of the word "like" in that complex sentence.
It's a combination.
Combination. Yeah, exactly. You sacrifice the word "I" to put in the word "like." So I was going to show you one of the most famous sacrifices of all time. This is one of the most famous moves of all time. And it's a little bit overrated, as many of these games are. Because when you go down in the weeds, you see that this move was not obligatory. Black had many other wins in this position. He only just chose this move arbitrarily because it was the most beautiful one. So, in terms of discussions of chess philosophy, a lot of people think that a truly beautiful move is one without which you could not have won the game. You know what I'm saying? It's the only path to winning the game. That adds a certain elegance to a move. If you're up 2 queens and you sacrifice one of them, well, then big shit. You could have won in 50 other ways. This game is called the gold coin game. It's called the gold coin game, and I'm pasting in the position in which this move occurred. So congratulations. Your game is mentioned in the same breath as the gold coin game.
Well, naturally, yeah. That's where I drew my inspiration from.
Exactly. So this game was played in the year 1912.
Great year.
Yep. Fantastic things happened. No ship sank in that year, yeah. And it was played by a guy named Stefan Levitsky and Frank James Marshall. Marshall was one of the strongest American players of the early 20th century, and he was known as a very strong attacking player. So no surprise that he created this move. Black to move in this position. So this will also double as good tactical training for you. Let's start with observations. Let's unpack a little bit about what's going on in this position. Anything that you can tell me.
Yeah, so Black is he's got quite a few attack options here. What I was looking at just initially off the placement here, since I've done so many forks, I was looking at sending his queen to e1 to get the rook out, and then fork the rook and then king on f3 with the knight.
So sending his queen to get the rook out. So basically, you want to give this potential fork on f3.
Yeah, and then that also frees it up for a back rank with our rook.
Yeah, so some concepts like these. The problem is he's got this pawn on g2 defending that square.
Oh, right.
So
right.
You could come up with a sacrifice like queen to f3, which is actually very close to what Marshall did. But there's another concept you should bear in mind, which is that your opponent doesn't have to take sacrifice pieces. Like if you put a piece on a square where it can be captured, your opponent can choose to capture it or you can choose not to capture it. Here he would choose to capture it. Then you capture back. He moves his king up. You take his queen and you might be like, well, I've won a pawn at the end of this, but what can he do now?
Black or white?
White. So after this entire combination has been initiated and then completed, the problem is white has a very nasty little move here. I mean, very simple if you look at the whole board. There's a hanging piece here.
Yeah, it's just taking the knight, right?
Taking the knight, yeah. Yeah, okay. I wasn't looking for anything earth-shattering here. So I can let you try to find this move. It's an incredibly hard move to find because it draws on so many tactical concepts that maybe you're not entirely familiar with yet. And the story behind this game, which I don't think is actually true, but back then tournaments were watched by a lot of people. So there was an auditorium, and there were people in the crowd, and they threw gold coins at Marshall after he played this move. Such was the beauty of this move. Such goes the story. I think it was bullshit, as most of these chess stories are. But it just gives you a sense of how much people like this move.
That sounds cute. All right.
Very cute. It's so wholesome, just like the entire game of chess. Do you want me to show you the move?
Well, let me take a shot at it.
Take a shot at it. I'll give you a couple of guesses, yeah. I mean, you've been impressing me so far. So who's to say you won't find this move too?
So what came to mind? I'll just go through the thought process.
Sure.
What I looked at right away was taking pawn on f2 with rook. He takes with rook, deliver a check on e1 with queen. He blocks with rook. You deliver another check with the knight and win a queen, but I don't think that works.
I love that you found that in general. The reason it doesn't work, and I actually had to think about this, is because he can start by taking your queen.
Yeah.
And if you give this knight
check,
check, the idea being you want to send the king to h1 and then back rank mate him, well, he just takes your rook.
Yeah.
So it doesn't quite do the trick, but you're definitely thinking in the right area of the board, obviously. But it's even more beautiful than that. I'll give you a tiny... It's not a capture and it's not a check. That's also what makes this move so amazing. It's so subtle in its own way.
Is it stacking the rooks by sending the rook on h3 to f3?
That would be too slow. If I take your queen, then did you have a follow-up in mind?
Yeah. No, that's just what I initially looked at.
Yeah, and that's how you have to find these moves. You know, you kind of look at crazy ideas, and you can threaten checkmate. The problem with threatening checkmate is it telegraphs the pass. He has a move to stop the mate, and he can just go h3. And unfortunately, you're left down a queen, which you've sacrificed. So, close. Again, close but no cigar.
I think it definitely has to start with that f2 pawn, like an attack on f2.
Yes,
I think that's
among
at least
other
what
things.
I'm seeing.
Yes. It attacks f2. Among other things that it attacks, it does make contact with that pawn. I mean, I'll sort of maybe guide you a little bit. I won't tell you anything that will really help you. But if this f2 pawn were gone, that's actually, you've seen me saying this a couple times. It's a good test. If this f2 pawn were gone, what would black be able to do?
I mean, then we could just get an attack right on the king. Like that'd be an easy way to just getting a back rank. If
Checkmate.
that f2 pawn was gone, we can just send the rooks down.
Exactly. So you could send your knight to e2, and then you could send your rook to f1 and deliver checkmate. So in a sense, this pawn is like tactically pinned. It's not actually pinned. It can legally move, but if it moves to, let's say, g3 or e3 or whatever, it's gone. Then you can deliver this checkmate. So you can almost imagine that this pawn is not making contact with any of the squares that it's defending. Now tell me something else. What if the h2 pawn were gone from the board? What would you be able to do then? Thanks, Vaincher, for the sub.
I'm not sure what you could do that quickly. I mean, obviously you could get the queen over onto the h file, but that would take 2 moves.
It's made in one, actually. You can, even if you want on your board, you could pretend you could like move the h pawn with your mouse away. Maybe that'll help you visualize it. But it's checkmate in 1 move if the h pawn were gone. Yeah, just freaking flush it down the toilet.
If the really?
Yep, it's made in 1, and it's a move that you're familiar with.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, so it's just checking with the knight if the h pawn's not there, right?
Bingo. That's called Anastasia's mate. By the way, I don't know who Anastasia was, but that's a form of Anastasia's mate. Exactly. But if you give this check immediately, then the king has, king h1. So you can combine these 2 observations
So he
to produce an incredible fucking move. Thank you, Brissa Paradox.
Okay, so it's not a check, but I see. So he just takes the h2 pawn with the rook, right?
Well, that would be like barreling in, because then he takes, and you've lost the vehicle with which you deliver the checkmate.
Yeah, never mind, that doesn't work.
The rook is sacred here. The rook is
sending
like,
the queen.
It's like you're trying to order beef at an Indian restaurant. Like, you can't give this rook up.
Damn. I'm not sure, man. I don't see it.
So... all of the people in your chat, let me see how many viewers you have. They're all going to simultaneously. 5,792 orgasms right now are about to happen. So I want everybody to prepare their paper towels, whatnot.
Okay.
So, whatever devices people use to mop up. All right, I'll say no more about that subject. Queen to G3. Queen to frickin' G3. Okay? I'll let you... let's take a moment of silence for this move, first of all. Now, I've explained to you already some of the ideas, so you should kind of be primed for this move. But essentially, the idea is this. If you take the queen or the h-pawn, then what do you do?
Well, then you just deliver the checkmate on e2.
Bingo. If you take the queen with the f-pawn, then again, you deliver the check on e2. And can you do the honors of pushing the rook down?
Yeah, and then you're just taking this bad boy.
Exactly. But to add insult to injury, white has yet another way to capture the queen. He can capture it with his own queen.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I don't see how that...
And now we might say, well, if you capture the queen with the rook, he captures the rook. And no longer does black have a rook on the h-file, so the king can simply escape any kind of check. But here, black in the intermediacy goes knight e2 check. For king, the king, and the queen. King has to move away. And again, black uses the concept of the two pins. He takes the queen with his knight with check.
That's fucking... Oh, man, that's big brain. Okay.
Same thing. You cannot take with the h-pawn your pins. You cannot take with the f-pawn because of the back rank. Now you have to move your king away. And to end the combination, black takes the rook. And essentially, he's now up a rook in a piece. White has to recapture the rook, ruining the pawn structure. And black goes knight d2. He's up a knight. And at the end of the day, and this is what makes it perhaps, this is a bit of a damper on the combination. For a grandmaster, this position is resignable. Black has succeeded in simplifying the game. And if you look at the starting position, black seemed to be in trouble because his queen was hanging and his rook was hanging. So it's a way of liquidating the game into a position where you're simply a piece up.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I didn't consider G3 at all. I thought once you take with the queen, your only option was taking back with the rook. I didn't even think to deliver the check and fork.
There's so many different elements to this combination, which is what makes it really nice. Now, the problem is, and this is what modern sort of chess scholars have come up with, is that you didn't actually have to go queen G3. It's like that, always that asshole in the room who has to shoot down whatever accomplishments people are sharing. So those people came along. And they took a look at a lot of the games that were considered the most beautiful. And they basically concluded that a lot of them were overblown. Because if you simply move your queen away from its attack, there's a problem. Why can't white take the rook? Thanks formerly for the bits.
You still deliver the check on e2. He only has one retreat square, or two, the g2 or h1, and then you can just deliver another check there on e4, and that's
it's not made. He has f3.
Yeah, but it's still a winning move, right?
Not quite. It's unclear because f3 and the rook is defending that pawn, so you're down in exchange here. So the reality is you have a fork. You've opened up the possibility for a fork by disrupting white's pawn structure on the king side.
Okay. So you're just going there to f3 then?
Bingo. Knight f3 check, attacking the king, attacking the queen. Then you take on g5, and you're up a queen for a rook, which is an overwhelming advantage.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this is... But sorry, that was a very long-winded explanation, but the move queen g3 is really, really famous. So to me, like, that's real beauty. You're putting the queen on a square where it can be captured by a million different pieces, and yet none of those captures work for whatever reason. So anyways, I think this could be a nice segue into sort of the instructional phase, where I actually want you to solve a certain set of problems. We're going to use that learning feature again on chess.com to qualify the types of problems that you solve into a particular category. And the reason I want to do it is to reinforce this concept of the order in which to do things. This is going to be experimental. I don't know if the problems that show up are going to be exactly the type that I want, but only if you're game for that. If you want to play more, you're totally the boss here. So
no, that sounds fine to me. What do you want? What do you want to see me solve?
So let me on my own stream go to your stream so that I can watch you. Just give me 1 second. So if you navigate over to whatever the puzzles are, and you click on learning, so I want you to do 4-move checkmates and advanced checkmates.
Okay.
Because, and the reason why is when you have several moves to a checkmate, you have to get the order right. So we'll see how these problems look. Maybe they won't be. And I want you to also, actually, no, this is fine. This is fine.
Okay.
Perfect.
So yeah, just run with these then?
Run with these, yeah. So let's begin. Ooh, Anastasia's made, actually.
Yeah, so this is exactly what we just looked at, right? So then the order here is no, that's not right.
Say, what move are you gonna play?
Rook h3
And you
to
got
set
the
that
wrong.
up.
You got the wrong order. So,
So okay, so it
piece of
starts with
advice
the check.
number one: if you can start with a check, you want to start with a check. Now, why won't you start with Rook h3? The reason is when a move you make sets a threat, but it's not a check, right? It's like telegraphing a pass in basketball. Somebody can get a steal by defending against that checkmate.
What defends that though? If I did go h3 to start, what can he defend within a single move?
Several ways. He can play rook to e8 to defend that particular square with his rook. He can also push up one of his pawns in order to clear out one of a series of retreating squares for his king. Either g6, and then his king is going to have g7, or f6, and his king is going to have f7.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
then, yeah.
In general, not all moves, which are not a check, give your opponent a chance to defend. We saw, for example, in your previous game, remember when you had that queen on h6 and the pawn on f6?
Yeah.
That was an example of something that's not a check, and yet he couldn't defend against mate. But that situation is a lot more rare than a situation in which you actually check him first.
Okay, well that makes sense to me then. Yeah, I guess
Perfect.
maybe I thought a little too deep into it.
Nice. Okay. Now this one is, I suppose, a similar, thrust of it is similar, but different type of mating pattern.
So if I do rook b7, he only has one retreat square, which is a8. I actually can't do that. It's still protected by this rook
exactly.
anyway.
Rook on b2. So you have to look at other forms of checkmating. Thank you.
So then does it start with the knight at c6 though?
Okay, he has to. Yep, you drive the king into the corner, and now it's time to find the checkmate.
Okay, so then it's just that then. Okay, I see.
And what's the final move of the combination? Yep, rook takes.
Yeah,
Sorry, there's a small delay when I'm watching your stream.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, that makes sense.
Perfect. So again, it starts with a check. You drive the king into the corner. You made him. Okay, this one is. We might have to raise the rating of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think this is just.
This is freaking amateur hour weak sauce right here.
That was an 800. Jesus, Daniel,
That is much less than 800. I don't know who comes up with a. Oh my goodness! What the hell? Man, they're making it look really good, Charlie.
Yeah, hold on. Let me back out and change these. You had me in the Weenie Hut Junior.
I really do. This is freaking.
All right, what do you want me to go? I'm gonna throw it up to 1500.
These are 1 in. I would go from the other end too. I would go like 1,000 to 1,500. I mean, be careful what you wish for, but I think that's good.
Oh, perfect. Oh,
there. Yeah. Are you freaking serious?
Yeah, it's 1,000. That's like a tough one.
What the hell? Do they have any other mates other than the scholar's mate? Okay, someone's getting fired over this.
It's the only mate that matters, bro.
They have like 2 types of mate. They have the knight and the rook mate, and they have the scholar's mate. It's like nobody has invented any other mates before.
Okay.
Yeah, someone in my chat says it considers 4-move mate on move 4. Yeah, that's basically what they. Okay, this one is decent, but still a little too easy for you.
So I think the combination starts. I take. He takes.
Yeah, this is a very good one in avoiding tunnel vision. This is called Boden's Checkmate.
Boden's Checkmate?
Yeah, named after a guy named Samuel Boden. Not that that matters even... Not that it creates an iota of importance in your life, but in case you were pining for that information. This type of pattern, I mean.
That's checkmate. Okay. Yeah, because the d7 is protected by the rook, right?
Exactly. Okay. So you... And this is what you have to do. You look at pieces whose control of squares are opened up by moving other pieces. Exactly.
That makes sense.
Nicely done. Let's keep going. Okay. We might need to raise this up a notch even further, actually.
Yeah, this is just checkmate right
Yep,
here, isn't it?
they're giving you too many mates in one. I made in ones. I don't know why. Yeah, we might have to do no advanced checkmates, just checkmates in 4, actually.
Okay, I mean that's fine.
Okay, but this one is good actually, so maybe I take it back. This one is a really good problem. Tough. What comes to mind?
So the first thing I looked at was pushing my f2 pawn up to f4 to free up this file. If he takes, I take with rook, it's check, but he just blocks with the knight, and I don't know.
Yep, good thinking. And the same, by the way, goes if you give, and I see some people in your chat are suggesting this move, queen f3 check, seems to be checkmate, but he blocks it with his knight. So you need to find other avenues. You need to identify first and foremost the mating squares. Like, on which squares could you actually deliver the checkmate, and then how do you get your pieces there in a way where they cannot be essentially stopped?
Okay. Well, so what I looked at now is I don't think it would work because I'm pretty sure you don't have to take it. But if I threw bishop onto h6 to get rid of that defender right there, so then if he does, well, no, he still has bishop, so that doesn't even work anyway.
Right.
He has 2 defenders if I did that.
It's
3 really with queen.
Yeah, he's got a lot. So you need to create a checkmating threat right now. Like, you have only one chance right now before he gets the reinforcements in. And that's the sense of urgency with which you should be operating. So you have to create a mate threat with your next move. Stumped, aren't we? Finally, stumped the man himself.
This is kind of a tough one.
I can tell you the piece that moves if you want.
Yeah,
it's a queen. It is a queen move. So I scared you off a little bit by saying queen f3, but it is a queen move.
Well, the only place to even threaten I mean, I can threaten in multiple ways. But the place to actually check is only on f3, but that check he just blocks with the knight. Is it bringing the queen over to g4 and looking that way to punch? That wouldn't
Close,
work.
But extend that even further. This move is not a check. So I said there's 2 categories. Usually it's a checking move, but not always.
So it is h5 and then taking on that pawn at h7?
You're missing the mating square. The mating square is f7. Queen h5 threatens queen f7 checkmate.
Oh, I looked deeper. I looked at G8. Yeah, wow, that makes no sense.
Really, really freaking deep.
Yeah, that's fucking dumb. I didn't even think of that. Okay.
Yeah, queen H5, and it's not over yet because he has 1 defense. Okay, no, he doesn't defend.
Well, the defense would just be bringing up the pawn.
Yeah, if you go down 2 moves on the using that arrow button. So.
Yeah, I brought it back. Whoops.
Yeah, so if he goes G6. This is a great exercise in identifying how the position has changed. Which new diagonals have opened up, which new squares have opened up for your pieces. This is another application of Boden's mate. You can go bishop h6 or queen h6, and both moves lead to checkmate, actually. Excellent. Yeah. So you see now, what do you think sort of caused the difficulty here? Was it looking a little bit too deep, not surveying enough of the mating squares?
Yeah, I guess I just wasn't thinking far enough, maybe, would be the problem. I'm not really sure. I think I'm looking too much for a move that puts a check, and maybe that's the problem.
I gotcha. Well, this next one is really 5-head, so.
Yeah, so things I look at immediately is I can pin that pawn to the king there on f2 by bringing queen to b6. I don't know what the follow-up would be there. Could also bring the rook over to g5 to pin the g2 pawn to the king.
Not bad ideas, either of them. The problem is you're down a piece, so you need to rob a bank, and you're trying to pick up a $10 bill off the floor. You need something extraordinary, and this is actually a form of Anastasia's mate. You can, if you're not too familiar with the pattern, and this training also is helping you learn common mating patterns. Which is necessary to get to the next level.
Okay.
The first move is actually a check.
Yeah, so it's the E2 check then.
Bingo. And you saw something very similar in that Marshall game I showed you. So this next move after knight E2 check is the real 5-head move.
Yeah, so this is just this, yeah, and then this.
Show me the move because there's a little delay. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll, I'll salvage you from this torturous problem solving.
No, these are helpful, man. I actually really think the puzzles here are super helpful.
The mating puzzles, I think, is what you really, really need. Okay, this one is tough. Yeah. This one is because it involves several tactical themes rolled up in one.
Okay. Well, I think it starts by delivering this check at b5. He blocks with bishop. I take with knight. No, because he takes with knight. His knight's still defending the d7 square, and he also has the b8 knight defending it as well. It's just really reinforced.
Well, if he blocks with his bishop, you take with the knight, and then you give a discovered check with your queen. The problem is if you give bishop b5 check, he blocks with his knight.
Yeah.
So
right. Well, yeah.
You need to identify in these positions piece of it. Where is the, and I'm going to be a little bit vague here, so I'll explain it in a moment. Where is the sort of focus of the tension? Where is most of the tension contained? On which square, which piece? Which piece do you feel like is the most vulnerable from your opponent's side?
Well, the tension right now is on the E file here.
Yeah.
We have an X-ray on his king. The bishop was pinned to it.
The bishop, exactly. The bishop on E6 is a very thin veil between the queen and the king, right? So you should immediately start thinking about, okay, so what is defending that bishop on E6?
Only this pawn, but he can't take my knight if I take his pawn with my knight.
Say that again?
So then I look. The F7 pawn. If I take F7 pawn, he has no way. Well, he takes with the king, actually.
Okay, extend that calculation. Knight takes F7, king takes F7. In your head, what happens then? Reevaluate that position as if you're looking at a new board.
Then I can just come up and take bishop with queen protected
Bingo.
by bishop.
Exactly right. So this is removing the defender, essentially. But you find this by identifying where the tension on the board is at its highest, right? Like, it's not just a random... Oh, I see it. Well, at my level, this is like the multiplication tables. But there is a way of logically reaching the solution. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess I just stopped right after the king takes, and I thought that was just going to be the end of it.
So you do this sometimes, and I teach my higher rated students something called the 15-second rule. That applies to variations that you calculate 6-7 moves long, but you can do the same thing. Basically, it says when you're about to stop calculating and you're about to abandon a variation and think that it doesn't work, you take 15 more seconds afterward to make sure that you're not abandoning it too early. You see what I'm saying? I know it's a little bit lame and everything, but I trust me, it really, really works. Let's do one last one, and then I'll swoop in.
Perfect. What a great one to finish off with.
Let's see. Oh, my fucking... Please don't tell me I'm seeing this. That doesn't count, asshole. Next one.
Those are some... I like those puzzles.
Those are so instructive. Oh. Well, this one you better see. And this is why chess is a game of pattern recognition. What mate is this? What is it called?
Yeah, this is the same. Anastasia's mate.
Anastasia's mate. Yep, exactly. I think it's Anastasia's mate. It would be embarrassing if I were wrong.
Okay, you'd make me feel like such a fucking idiot.
I know, you're like repeating what a GM said to you, and the GM doesn't know what he's talking about. He should be fired. All right, that's good for now. But if you get the hankering, if you get the Jones to solve alone, which I know you get basically every minute of every waking moment, if you check those boxes, what you really need work on, this will help you get the order of things right, is dealing with checkmates. Because with checkmates, the margin of error is very, very low. If you make a wrong move in the wrong order, you give your opponent a chance to defend against the mate.